Would you like to begin with your own questions, or would you like Mrs. Mulhern to begin with her own information?
Her own information.
Okay. Well, does any of you or all of you know what sort of life it is to live under a dictator? You have a country with a dictatorship. You do know? Right. You have heard and you know what a dictator is, correct? You all know? Good. And this is where the whole thing begins. It's when you are born under a dictator in not a free country, where you can choose your president or he tells you what to do. It's by choice. Here it's by no choice, so that they can just lead an entire country into a war, and no one can say anything. And that's exactly what happened during World War II, where Mussolini was the dictator in Italy and Hitler was the dictator in Germany. And they decided to join arms and fight the world or conquer the world, or whatever reasons they had, because I believe mainly because they were power drunk and no other good. So when you're born under dictatorship, you're brainwashed and you're taught just what they want you to know, not what the truth is, but what they think you should know, just so it gives them that much more power. And that is how they began with World War II, and they thrust entire countries into a horrible, destructive war. I was born under this dictatorship, so you don't know any better. You're just taught what they want you to know. And your parents or the adult people that do know better, that disagree with them, they wouldn't dare tell the children otherwise, because the children may talk, and any neighbor or anyone, any friend, anyone in the town could say it to the police, and next thing you know, your parents disappear. You can go home from school or from play or from whatever and find that your parents are gone. The police have taken them away because they dared to be enemy of the regime. Because all they did was say that they don't agree with Mussolini declaring war on the United States or going into Africa and fighting those people who had no guns. They were fighting with spears. So simply by saying anything against them, your whole family could be exterminated, taken away. And so, when war finally came to our doorstep, I was about your age. At first, when we heard they were fighting in Russia, and they were fighting in Africa, and they were fighting in Bulgaria, whatever, it doesn't touch you personally, and you feel very sorry for the people involved. But it's distant, it's far away. You're still eating and drinking in your own home, and you're still living your own life, and it doesn't affect you that much. You sympathize with the poor people that were being bombed. You really don't know what being bombed is until then it reached our own homes. And this is when we realize what war is. We lived in a town. At the foot of the hills was one town, and on the plain here was another town. At first, we were allies with Germany. Italy and Germany were allies, correct? Does any one of you know anything about that? The Axis and form? Yes. You know that. Yeah, very good. And we were fighting Russia and England and the United States, and all we were told was that we were winning. We were told we were winning even though we were losing. But because there are no books, there are no newspapers, no radio. The radio, yes, was in existence, but they are not allowed to tell you the truth. They are only allowed to tell you what the dictator wants the country to know. They wouldn't dare say, we are losing a battle. We had to retreat. It was always we were holding our own and we were advancing in other fronts. Even though it wasn't true, even to the very end. The only time we realized we were losing is when they finally the bombs started falling on our heads. Then we knew we were losing. And you cannot find out the truth from any source. And so, this is how the dictatorship works. Where you live in a shell, you live in an enclosure, and you know absolutely nothing. So war finally reached our doorstep. When the king then signed peace with the United States, and he fled to Switzerland, so he saved himself and the royal family. Then Germany had become our enemy. From being allied, Germany realized we were their enemies because now we signed peace with the United States. So they became our enemies, and Italy was just loaded with all German soldiers. And they were fighting every one of us who dared disagree with them or do anything. There was a day when a civilian stole a gun from one of the German soldiers. And they gave us an ultimatum. Either they returned the gun in 24 hours or they would mine and blow up the entire town. They had all the guns, we had nothing. No one could fight back. There was no court, no law, no judges, no lawyers, no anyone, not even a government that we could turn to. So we had enemies that were bombing us from the top, and enemies that were walking the streets in our own homes. Excuse me. So when the Germans took over, they disarmed all the Italian soldiers. They took away any gun that they had or any ammunition they had, and they took over Italy. You would be in your home eating or talking or going about your business, and they would march in. They had these, they wore these boots with hobnails on their knees. That was their army uniform. And you could hear the footsteps very, very hard. You knew they were coming. They would enter your home, don't never say a word to anyone. They would take a tour of the entire house, and then they would leave. When they left, you would look at your door outside. If they put a mark on it, that meant they were going to make your home their headquarters. That meant you had to leave. And that was their system. They had everyone terrorized. Where day by day, you never knew whether you were going to live or die or be taken away or whatever. At the time, my father was here in the United States. He was about to come back to Italy when the war broke out. But then he knew if he had come back, he would have had to be in the army and fight for Mussolini, which he wasn't going to do. So he stayed here. So we were separated by this war. Then my mother had all the letters, all his letters and souvenirs and things put away. When the Germans took over, she had to burn them all. Because if they found out that my father was in the United States, they would have burned the house or taken us away. So we were told by my mother that if the Germans asked, "Where is your father?" he would say, "He's prisoner in England." never mention the United States. Otherwise, they would feel automatically that you are an enemy. And the front was coming toward us. You know what the front is? The front is the battle line, where the conflict actually is, where the soldiers with soldiers are fighting each other. Face to face, practically, that's the front line. Is advancing toward our town. The Americans are bombing. They only would bomb, mostly, they would bomb civilians because there is no benefit by it. If they kill civilians, civilians are doing nothing. The hospitals, they would put a big cross on the roof, painted, so that the Americans would know that's a hospital, and they would bomb that. But they would bomb bridges and railroads, mostly, because that is how you cripple the enemy. You blow up the bridges, the enemy cannot go back and forth with their tanks and their trucks. The same with the railroad. So in my hometown, there was, at the railroad station, there was a train full of ammunition parked there. The Germans had left there, ready to be taken to the front. In the morning, the planes came. The railroad station in the town is down here, and there's another town at the foot of the hills here. So we are up here because the planes came in the morning. They bombed the railroad station, but they didn't get the train. So
Thomas Pike to Mr. O'Neill.
we came up here. They came back in the afternoon. The mountains are here. They would come around the mountains, dive down, bomb the train, and go around in circles again. Come back, dive down, and bomb the train. They would release the bombs right on top of our heads here in order for them to fall about 4 kilometers away. That's almost 4 miles. And even though we would watch them, because we knew if the bomb is coming this way, it will never land straight down. It will just land like that. As a matter of fact, one day we watched 2 American planes went after the bridge. And one, they dove, either came up too slowly or the other one came up too fast.
Thomas Pike, Mr. O'Neill.
Now, these planes came back in the afternoon because they knew the train was there. And we were all watching up here. The train was camouflaged with tree branches and straw. You know, the camouflage in the war is you even see soldiers sometimes with little branches of trees on their heads, so they blend into the scenery, so the planes can see them. And when they came in the afternoon, we saw the flames. They hit part of the train where the straw was set on fire, and we were watching these flames. When suddenly the flames spread, and the train full of ammunition exploded. We didn't know, and we are watching this whole scene from up here, when the air pressure alone, and you know what the air pressure is when something explodes, threw people to the ground, and this is now 4 miles away. Air mines. Locks, bolts like this thick of iron, they were bolting doors all the way up here, were twisted like a little twig. All glasses shattered. The sky was just red, just one big flame. And the noise, I can't even begin to describe to you, of the explosion. For 10 days afterwards, all the ammunition that was there kept on exploding. So this is when everyone then took to the mountains, nearby mountains. The town was declared a zone of war. And that means no one's to be seen there, no civilian should be there, because they can shoot you if they see you. And we all went to the mountains. We took refuge where these people that we don't even know how they lived there or got there. They're like mountain pirates or whatever you want to call them, because they had these little homes on the side of the mountain that they took us in, and we lived 10 people in one room, a room that's about a quarter of this room, without getting washed for 9 months, without mirrors, without clothes change, same clothes we came up with. And yet we consider ourselves lucky because we did have a little bit of food left, whereas there were other families that had taken a dead horse and they were feeding off a dead horse because there was no food to be found if they wanted to survive. We had all the sheep's lice growing up our legs. The what? The lice from sheep, not even people's lice. These are big, fat lice. Awful, ugly. You would be walking, because we had sheep and other animals underneath the floor. There was a little cave under there, and that's where the animals were. And all night long you could hear their bells. And the mountain, you could, there is no access to these mountains even by a bicycle. You can't, because there is no path. You just go from rock to rock. No narrow path, no mules even could get there. The people that lived here, that had these little homes, up there, they had heard there was such a thing as Rome. Rome is the capital of it, but they didn't know where it was or how it was, or they just knew the name. They lived by making cheese with their goats and sheep and bread, and that was it. They had never been outside this little area, which is really God-forsaken country. But we found shelter there for these 9 months until the Allies, which were the United States, England, and Russia, finally passed our own town. The front passed. We knew because the cannons were going back and forth. And for 9 months, every time we heard the cannons close by, we were very happy because we knew they were coming. That soon they would be past us and we would be free. But then all of a sudden we would hear them far away, they'd been pushed back. So one night, it was a beautiful spectacle. They had taken the town of Monte Cassino. Did anybody hear of that word, Mount Cassino? There was a monastery, an ancient monastery up on the mountain. That is where they'd been stopped, the troops. Because the Germans had taken refuge in the monastery. They knew the Americans would never bomb anything as valuable as an ancient monastery, which was very valuable because of all the paintings, ancient art. They knew the Americans have a love for art and things that you cannot replace once you destroy them. This is why Rome was declared open city and was never bombed. We bombed around Rome, but never in Rome. Once you destroy that, you cannot replace it. But the Germans took advantage of this. That's where they made their headquarters. And they had cannons pointing down in the valley. This is why the Allies couldn't come through. Finally, the Americans did bomb the monastery. That was the only way, because they were losing thousands and thousands.
Mrs. Mayfield, please send Christine Chapin to Mr. O'Neill.
So, the night that they took Mount Cassino, we saw at a distance was all these players, the Americans were celebrating the taking them out of the scene. And they were just shooting all these beautiful players. They would put Gucci to shame for the display, because they finally had overcome this big obstacle that was keeping them from continuing on. And all they were doing were being killed, slaughtered. So we knew once that casino was taken, that soon they would be at our hometown. And so they did. When they did, we are on the mountains, and we were so afraid they would be pushed back that all the people that were refugees up there on the mountain, we just started walking down, trying to cross the front and meet them, for fear that if they were pushed back, we would be stuck and know so much longer there. And even then, one last soldier, though the Germans knew they were losing. They had all retreated, but there were a handful left. And one soldier shot after us. My uncle was a priest, and I had a sister who was born with a bad heart. So her heart always beat very, very fast. For fear that the Germans would shoot us all, because we knew that we were going to meet the Allies, we ran into a nearby home. We put my sister to bed, and my uncle made believe he was saying the last rites, because we knew that if he just felt her heart, he could see how it was pumping and that she was about to die. She wasn't, but we had to make believe we would grasp at the last straw. But all he did was steal a goat that some other people had and went away and let us go. So we came back and our homes were destroyed. It was just one big home that belonged to an old Italian general, and the whole town just left me there that night because that was safe. The Germans had mined everything. They mined fields. They had put mines on their tanks. That this way, when the American soldiers would go and get the tanks, they would blow up. They had mined the bodies of dead soldiers. Put mines under them because they know that you have to bury them, so that when the Americans would go and pick up the body, the mine would explode. So we couldn't go back because they knew they wanted to. They knew there were no mines in this one home, and the whole town just slept in there for the night, while the cannons are going back and forth, fighting, exploding. We could hear the whistle. We got to know every shell that was exploding. Anyone? Questions? David?
Questions yesterday. Where were they? Was anyone in your family?
Yes, I had an uncle that was, as a result of that war, passed away. And what happened was,
Mr. O'Neill,
when we all fled to the mountains, everyone had to leave whatever belongings they had, because you couldn't take them with you. So in order to try and save them for when we come back to our homes, everyone had buried them. Either put them behind walls or hidden places so the Germans would just have a ball with it and throw it out the window or burn it or whatever. And this uncle had come back down from the mountain to see if any of his belongings were still in the home. But what happened was, there had been a few cases of people that had tuberculosis in the town. So the Germans wanted for these people to put a sign in front of the door so that they wouldn't go in that house. They were afraid of contamination or any infectious disease. So a lot of people, figuring that to keep them out, they started putting signs in front of their doors. that said tuberculosis, typhus, or other things. But the soldiers got wise to that. When my uncle went into his home, they came in, and they had the pistol on hand, because they always had a pistol on hand, for fear that you might hit them or do something. Even with a young girl, that could possibly do anything to them, but they always was at one point. And they ordered him to lie down in his bed. They put the pistol to his temple, and they started saying, where are you sick? Where are you sick? That's all they kept saying. And he was shaking and begging, and they kept saying, where are you sick? He said, if I say my chest, they'll shoot me in the chest. If I say my head, they'll shoot me in the head. Then they covered his face with the sheet, and he said, now they're going to kill me. And even though they didn't, they just had their fun with him. Later on, he developed heart trouble, and he died. He was never the same since that day when he had gone through this experience that's terrorized him. But they were bringing people in the hometown, they were killed by bombs. Because when they bomb, it is run. There is no reason to run, because a bomb could fall here as well as where you're running. But it is a reaction you have. You just run. You don't know why. And you go away from this room only to go hide in another room. And the proof of this is that everybody does it. Women left their children and ran, screamed. It's just one of those reactions that you have from terror. It's like when people were getting out of the fire, they panic. It's a panic that strikes you. The proof of that is that there was one time they were bombing, and this one priest left his home and ran to a cave at the side of the mountain. A bomb fell right on that cave and killed him and other people from the town. They were in there. Whereas his house is still standing. If he had remained there while he died of war, he would have been alive. But he left his home to go and take refuge in the cave. And they died. But you have to. It's something that comes over you. Anybody else would like to ask something?
What happened to your father?
My father was here. So he escaped all the time. And this is why we came here. He had been here while we were in Italy. But he was about to come back when the war broke out. So he didn't come back because he had to be in Mussolini's army. So he stayed here. And therefore we were separated by the war. Then after the war, he sent for us, and we all came here, my sisters and my mother. Anyone else? When you're a child, and I'm sorry if I call you children, but when you're my age, you call people your age children. You see, you can't think anything but good, because this is what you've been told. And there is no one else that will tell you otherwise. No one dares to tell you otherwise. And you can't learn it from a newspaper or the radio, because they're not allowed to. If they did, they would last the end of the day. They would be taken away. They would be disposed of. And this is how any dictator keeps his country in their place, by terrorizing them. See, if I said Mussolini is no good, if I dared say, and my neighbor says, why not? I said, well, my mother said that. They would take my mother away. And that would be it. And then everybody else learns a lesson. That you don't speak against, he's a god. He makes himself a god. You don't speak against him because he's God. You see, when we went to school, in elementary school, as little children, behind the teacher's desk would be, in the center, would be the crucifix or the picture of Christ, because he believes Catholic. So that's the way the law was. The picture of Christ. Then on one side is a picture of the king, and the other side a picture of Mussolini. And just as you pledge allegiance to the flag, you would start the day by saying the prayer, the morning prayer, and then the teacher would tell you, say a special prayer for Mussolini, because if our king dies, the son will be king. But if Mussolini dies, Italy will have no leader, and there will be nothing but destruction without a leader, which was Mussolini. The children get so brainwashed, this is day after day after day, that you actually go to bed at night, you don't say anymore, God bless my mother or my father, but you give the special prayer that God should give Mussolini good health and long life. Because you hate the thought of this idol, this man died. Right, in reference to concentration camps. I can only speak for myself and my family in my hometown, but we knew nothing. I never heard of a concentration camp. I never heard the word until I came here, till all the war was over. I never knew its existence. When they would take the Italians or someone, and we would hear hush-hush, your parents or someone in the neighbor say, they took away so-and-so today, or this morning. Because when they took people away, they didn't make a big parade out of it. They just come very quietly and take you away. So, I never understood why would they take someone away. Because you don't let the children know a lot of things. Always for fear. So you're always living in fear. In fear that if it ever gets out, if it ever gets around, you will be next. Your family will be next. So, I used to hear someone was taken away, or political prisoners, and taken to a place called the Breda. For all I knew, the Breda was a summer camp in some place. I didn't know, but that was a concentration camp. There was a place called the Fosse Martini, which is a big hole in the ground. And a big hole, I mean a tremendous hole. People were taken there, lined up at the edge of this hole, and machine guns so they would fall right in. Either dead or half dead or whatever, left there.
Teachers, please excuse the interruption. There is no field leadership training session.